I was locked out of my apartment at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night in the middle of February. It was snowing, I was in pajama pants and a hoodie with no coat, and my phone was at 2% battery. I had gone down to the building's trash room to throw away some boxes, and when I came back up, I realized I had left my keys on the kitchen counter. The building super didn't answer his phone, the landlord's emergency number went to voicemail, and I was standing in the hallway of my 4th floor walk-up in Brooklyn, freezing and exhausted and out of options. That's when my neighbor's door opened. The penthouse neighbor I had never actually met, the one who lived in the only expensive apartment in our otherwise modest building. The one everyone whispered about because he owned the entire top floor, while the rest of us lived in tiny studios and one-bedrooms. He stood in his doorway, looking at me with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice was kind, but also uncertain, like he wasn't sure if he should be getting involved. "I'm locked out," I said, my teeth starting to chatter from the cold. "I'm trying to reach my super, but he's not answering." "Do you want to wait inside?" he offered. "It's freezing out here." I hesitated. I didn't know this man. I had seen him in passing a few times, always well-dressed and polite, but never stopping to chat. But I was cold and desperate, and my phone was dying, so I said yes. I followed him into his apartment, and that's when I saw it. Hanging on the wall in his living room, in a place of prominence where you couldn't miss it, was a portrait of me. Not a photograph, an actual painted portrait, oil on canvas, incredibly detailed and realistic. It showed me sitting in what looked like a coffee shop, reading a book, sunlight streaming through the window behind me. I was wearing clothes I recognized, a green sweater I had bought 2 years ago. My hair was up in the messy bun I always wore when I was reading. Every detail was perfect, down to the small scar on my left eyebrow. I stood there staring at it, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. "That's me," I said slowly. "Why do you have a painting of me?" The man looked at the portrait, then back at me. His expression was impossible to read. "We need to talk," he said. "My name is Sophie Chen. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how I got locked out of my apartment and discovered that my neighbor, a man I had never properly met, had a portrait of me hanging in his penthouse. A portrait I had never posed for. A portrait I didn't know existed. And how that one strange night led me to uncover secrets about my past that changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Let me start from the beginning, because none of this makes sense without context. I moved to Brooklyn 3 years ago from Seattle. I had just finished graduate school with a degree in library science, and I got a job as an archivist at a small museum in Manhattan. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to afford a tiny studio apartment in a somewhat sketchy neighborhood. The building I lived in was old, probably built in the 1920s, and it had been converted into apartments sometime in the 70s. Most of the units were small and affordable, but the top floor, the 5th floor, was different. It was a penthouse that had been created by combining what used to be 3 separate apartments. According to building gossip, the owner was some kind of artist or art dealer who traveled a lot and kept to himself. I had moved in about 3 years ago, and in all that time, I had seen the penthouse neighbor maybe a dozen times. Always in passing. Always with a polite nod, but never a conversation. He was probably in his mid-30s, tall, with dark hair, and an artistic look about him. Jeans and nice sweaters, the kind of casual, expensive style that artists seem to master. My best friend Rachel, who lived in Manhattan and visited often, was obsessed with him. "He's gorgeous," she would say. "You need to talk to him. Get invited up to that penthouse." "I'm not going to hit on my neighbor," I would tell her. "That's weird. Besides, he's probably married or in a relationship or just not interested." But now, standing in his penthouse at 11 p.m., staring at a portrait of myself, I was wishing I had been more curious about him before.
The man, my mysterious neighbor, gestured for me to sit down on his couch. "I'm going to make some tea," he said, "and then I'm going to explain everything. I promise this isn't as creepy as it looks." "It looks pretty creepy," I said, still staring at the portrait. "I know," he said. "Just give me 5 minutes." He disappeared into what I assumed was the kitchen. I took the opportunity to look around his apartment. It was beautiful. High ceilings, exposed brick walls, hardwood floors that looked original to the building. The furniture was expensive but comfortable looking, and there was art everywhere. Paintings, sculptures, photographs. Some looked like they might be famous, though I'm not an art expert. And then there was my portrait. Right there, on the main wall, lit by a spotlight, like it was the centerpiece of his collection. I walked closer to it, studying every detail.
Whoever had painted this had spent hours observing me. They had captured not just my physical features, but something more. The way I tilt my head when I read, the slight crease between my eyebrows when I'm concentrating, the way my left hand always holds my coffee cup while my right hand turns the pages. It was unsettling and beautiful and deeply confusing. The man came back with 2 mugs of tea. He handed me one and sat down in a chair across from me. "My name is Daniel Park," he said. "I'm an art dealer. I own a gallery in Chelsea. I'm sorry for the shock. I should have told you about the painting long ago, but I honestly didn't know how to bring it up." "Why do you have a painting of me?" I asked. "Who painted it?" Daniel took a deep breath. 5 years ago, I represented an artist named Marcus Webb. He was incredibly talented, but troubled, struggled with mental health issues, substance abuse. His work was brilliant when he was stable, but he had long periods where he couldn't paint at all. About 6 years ago, Marcus became obsessed with what he called urban angels. He would spend hours in coffee shops and parks and public spaces, just observing people. He said he was looking for subjects who had a certain quality, a light, he called it. People who seemed to radiate something special even when they didn't know anyone was watching. And one day he saw you. "Where?" I asked. "In a coffee shop in Brooklyn," Daniel said. "The one on the corner of Smith and Atlantic. You were there almost every Saturday morning, always in the same seat by the window, always reading. Marcus started sketching you. Then he started painting you. He created an entire series, actually. 7 paintings in total. All of you in different positions and lighting, but all from that coffee shop." I felt a chill run down my spine. Someone watched me for weeks and painted me without my knowledge? That's not romantic, that's stalking. "I know," Daniel said quietly, "and Marcus knew it too. He struggled with the ethics of it, but he said he couldn't help himself. He said you were the perfect subject, that you had exactly the quality he had been searching for. He called the series The Girl Who Reads." "This is one of those 7 paintings?" I asked. "This is the first one," Daniel said. "The one Marcus considered his masterpiece. The others were sold to various collectors over the years, but this one, I kept it." "Why?" I asked. "Why would you keep a painting of a stranger?" "Because 2 years after Marcus finished the series, he died," Daniel said. "Overdose. He had been clean for 6 months, but he relapsed. I was his dealer and his friend, and I blamed myself for not seeing the signs. After he died, I kept this painting as a way to remember him, to remember his talent and his vision. And then, about 3 years ago, I bought this penthouse. I had been living in Manhattan, but I wanted something different. More space, less expensive. And when I moved in and was hanging my art collection, I realized something. There was a woman in the building who looked exactly like the woman in Marcus's painting. It was you. You've known for 3 years that I'm the person in this painting and you never told me?" I asked. "I didn't know how," Daniel said. "What was I supposed to say? Hi, neighbor, I have a painting of you that was created without your knowledge by an artist who's now dead." It seemed invasive and strange. I convinced myself it was better to just keep it private. "But you kept it on your wall," I said, "where anyone who visited could see it." "I don't have many visitors," Daniel admitted. "I'm fairly private." And the few friends who do come over, I tell them it's a commissioned piece from a model. I never told anyone it was my neighbor. We sat there in silence for a moment. My tea was getting cold, but I couldn't seem to move. There was too much information to process. An artist I never knew existed had watched me for weeks, had painted me multiple times, and had died before I ever learned about it. And his art dealer, who became my neighbor by coincidence, had been living one floor below me for 3 years with my face on his wall. "This is insane," I finally said. "I know," Daniel agreed. "But there's more you need to know." "More?" I asked. "What else could there possibly be?" "The other 6 paintings in the series," Daniel said. "I know where 5 of them are. They were sold to various collectors, and I've kept track of them over the years. It's part of my job as Marcus's former dealer. But the 6th painting, the last one he completed before he died, that one disappeared." "What do you mean, disappeared?" I asked. "I mean, it was stolen. About 2 years ago, it was part of an exhibition at a gallery in Boston. Someone broke in overnight and took only that one painting, nothing else. The police investigated but never found it or figured out who took it." "Why would someone steal a painting of me?" I asked. "I'm nobody. Nobody famous, nobody important." "That's what I've been trying to figure out," Daniel said. "At first I thought it was just a random theft. Someone who liked the painting and took an opportunity. But then things started to feel off." "What things?" I asked.
"Other people started asking about the Girl Who Reads series," Daniel said. "Collectors I didn't know. Art dealers I had never worked with. All asking the same questions. Who was the subject? Where was she now? Could they commission Marcus's estate for more work? Obviously, that's impossible since Marcus is dead. That the interest was unusual. Most artists don't become this sought after posthumously unless there's something special about the work or the subject." "And you think there's something special about me?" I said. "I think there might be something I don't understand about why Marcus was so obsessed with you," Daniel said. "And I think whoever stole that painting might know something I don't." "This is too much," I said, standing up. "I came here because I was locked out of my apartment. I wasn't expecting to walk into the plot of a mystery novel." "I know," Daniel said, standing as well. "And I'm sorry. I should have told you about the painting years ago. But now that you know, I think you should be aware that someone out there is very interested in Marcus's paintings of you, and I don't know why." Just then, my phone died. The screen went black, and I was left standing in a stranger's apartment, learning that I had been the unknowing subject of a famous artist's work, and that someone was apparently obsessed enough to steal one of the paintings. "This is my life now," I said to nobody in particular. "Would you like to stay here tonight?" Daniel offered. "I can sleep on the couch. You can take my bedroom. Your door won't be fixed until morning anyway, and you'll be warmer here than in the hallway." I should have said no. I should have called Rachel and asked her to come get me, or gone to a hotel, or literally anything other than spending the night in the apartment of a man I barely knew. But I was exhausted and overwhelmed, and honestly, a part of me was curious. So I said yes. Daniel gave me some clothes to sleep in, a t-shirt and sweatpants that were comically large on me. He showed me to his bedroom, which was minimalist but comfortable. There were more paintings on the walls, but none of them were of me. Before he left me alone, he turned back. "Sophie," he said, "I really am sorry about all of this. I never wanted you to find out this way." "How did you want me to find out?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe I hoped you never would." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Marcus Webb, this artist I had never met, watching me in a coffee shop 6 years ago. I tried to remember those Saturday mornings. Had I noticed anyone staring? Had I felt observed? But it was so long ago, and I had been so absorbed in my books, I didn't think I would have noticed anything. I also thought about Daniel, living one floor below me for 3 years, seeing me in the building and knowing he had a painting of me. Had he been watching me too? Studying me? Comparing the real me to the painted version? The thought made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't quite name. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. I got dressed in my clothes from the night before and went out to the living room. Daniel was in the kitchen making breakfast. "I called your super," he said. He's coming by at 10 to let you into your apartment. Until then, would you like some eggs? We ate breakfast in awkward silence. Then Daniel said something that surprised me. I think you should see the other paintings. What? I asked. The 5 paintings I know the location of, Daniel said. I think you should see them. Maybe if you do, we can figure out why someone is so interested in them. Why would I want to see more paintings of myself that I didn't know existed? I asked. Because knowledge is power, Daniel said. Right now, someone out there knows more about the situation than we do. The only way to level the playing field is to understand what Marcus was trying to capture. What made these paintings special enough that people are willing to steal them? I thought about it. He had a point. And besides, I was curious now. Fine, I said. Where are they? 2 are in private collections in Manhattan, Daniel said. 1 is in a gallery in Philadelphia. 1 is owned by a collector in Boston, not the one that was stolen. And the last one is actually in a museum in Chicago. Can we really just go see them? I asked. Some of them, Daniel said. The ones in private collections will be harder. I'll need to make some calls and ask for favors. But the gallery and museum pieces, we can see those anytime. So that's how I spent my Saturday. After the super let me back into my apartment and I changed into real clothes, Daniel and I took the subway into Manhattan to see the first painting. It was in the home of a collector named Richard Hayes, an older man who had made his fortune in tech and now spent his retirement collecting art. Daniel had called ahead and Richard agreed to let us visit. The painting was hanging in Richard's study. It showed me in the same coffee shop, but from a different angle. In this one, I was looking out the window, my book closed on the table in front of me. The expression on my face was contemplative, almost sad.
I don't remember feeling sad, I said, staring at it. Marcus had a way of capturing emotions people didn't know they were feeling, Richard said. That's what made his work so special. He could see beneath the surface. Why did you buy this painting? I asked. Because when I saw it, I saw my daughter, Richard said. She died 5 years ago. Cancer. She was a reader too, always had her nose in a book. When I look at this painting, I see her. I see the quiet moments I took for granted when she was alive. I felt my throat tighten. I'm sorry for your loss, I said. Richard smiled sadly. Art is supposed to make us feel something, he said. This painting makes me feel connected to her. That's worth more than any amount of money. We left Richard's apartment and headed to the second location, a gallery in Chelsea. This painting was part of their permanent collection, hanging in a back room with other contemporary works. This one showed me from behind, my shoulders hunched over my book, my hair falling forward. It was more abstract than the others, with loose brushstrokes and muted colors. It looks like I'm hiding, I said. From what? Daniel asked. I don't know, I admitted, but that's what it feels like I'm trying to disappear into my book. After the gallery, we took a train to Philadelphia to see the third painting. This one was in a small gallery that specialized in emerging artists. The owner, a woman named Catherine, greeted us warmly. I loved Marcus's work, she said. He had such a unique vision. This painting was different from the others. It was more vibrant, more alive. In it, I was laughing at something in my book, my head thrown back, my whole face lit up with joy. I didn't know Marcus ever saw me laugh, I said. You look happy, Daniel observed. I was happy back then, I said, before grad school stress and job hunting and all the responsibilities of adult life. I missed that version of myself. By the time we got back to Brooklyn that evening, I was emotionally exhausted. Seeing myself through Marcus's eyes had been strange and moving and unsettling all at once. Want to come up? Daniel asked when we got to our building. I can order dinner and we can talk about what we learned. I hesitated, then agreed. I wasn't ready to be alone with my thoughts yet. We ordered Thai food and sat in his living room, the portrait of me watching from the wall. So, what did we learn? Daniel asked. I learned that Marcus was incredibly talented, I said, and that he saw things in me I didn't see in myself. But I still don't understand why someone would steal one of these paintings. What makes them valuable enough to risk theft? Daniel was quiet for a moment,
Then he said something that changed everything. What if it's not about the paintings themselves? What if it's about you? About me? I asked. What do you mean? What if someone is trying to find you? Daniel said. What if the questions collectors have been asking, the stolen painting, what if it's all because someone is looking for Sophie Chen? But why? I asked. I'm not anyone important. I don't have money or connections or anything that would make someone want to find me. Are you sure? Daniel asked gently. Is there anything in your past that might explain this? I thought about it. My childhood was normal, middle-class family in suburban Seattle, loving parents, an older brother, good schools, normal teenage years. I went to college, got my degree, worked a few jobs before grad school. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make anyone obsessed with finding me. Not that I know of, I said. But now I'm wondering if there's something I don't know. That night, after I went back to my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every memory I could access. Was there anything strange about my childhood? Any gaps in what I knew? I thought about my parents. They had always been loving and supportive, but now that I was really thinking about it, they had also always been somewhat protective, more than my friends' parents seemed to be. They didn't like me posting photos of myself online. They insisted I used a P.O. box instead of our home address for anything public. They had been strangely insistent that I not do one of those DNA ancestry tests when they became popular. At the time, I had chalked it up to them being private people, but now I wondered if there was more to it. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, to process everything that was happening. I spent the morning Googling myself again, this time more thoroughly. I searched for my name, plus Seattle, plus my high school, plus my college. Nothing unusual came up. Then I started searching for information about Marcus Webb. I read every article I could find about him, his troubled childhood, his rise in the art world, his struggles with addiction. There were interviews where he talked about his process, about how he found his subjects. In one interview from about 7 years ago, Marcus said something that caught my attention. He said, "I'm interested in people who are hiding, not hiding in an obvious way, but hiding in plain sight. People who look ordinary, but have something extraordinary about them, something they might not even know themselves. I had been hiding something extraordinary. I just hadn't known what." Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about Daniel's theory. What if someone was looking for me? But who and why? I decided to do something I had been avoiding. I decided to ask my parents directly if there was anything about my past they hadn't told me. I called my mom on a Wednesday afternoon. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Sophie, how are you, honey?" "Mom, I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to be completely honest with me." There was a pause. "What's wrong?" Mom asked. Her voice had shifted, become cautious. "Is there anything about my childhood you haven't told me?" I asked. "Anything unusual about where I came from or how I came to be your daughter?" The pause was longer this time. "Sophie, why are you asking this?" "Just answer the question, Mom," I said. "Please." I heard her take a deep breath. Then I heard her call for my dad. "Robert," she said, her voice distant from the phone. "You need to come here. Sophie's asking questions." When my dad got on the line, his voice was serious. "Sophie, what brought this on? I need to know if there's something about my past that you've been keeping from me," I said. "I need to know the truth." There was a long silence. Then my mom said something that made my blood run cold. "Sophie, your father and I have been waiting for this call for 28 years. We knew someday you would start asking questions. We just hoped we would have more time." "What does that mean?" I asked, my heart pounding. "What aren't you telling me?" "We can't do this over the phone," Dad said. "You need to come home. We need to have this conversation in person." "No," I said. "I need to know now. What is going on?" "Please," Mom said. I could hear tears in her voice. "Just come home this weekend. We'll tell you everything. We promise." I hung up feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. My parents had been keeping secrets, big secrets, the kind of secrets that required in-person conversations. I went upstairs to Daniel's apartment and knocked on the door. When he opened it, he took one look at my face and pulled me inside. "What happened?" he asked. "I called my parents," I said, "and they basically admitted they've been lying to me my entire life. They want me to come home this weekend to talk." "I'm coming with you," Daniel said immediately. "What?" I asked. "You're not going through this alone," Daniel said. "Whatever you're about to find out, you need support, and I want to be there for you." I barely knew him. We had only started spending time together a few weeks ago, but I realized I wanted him there. I wanted his steady presence, his calm logic, his support. "Okay," I said, "come with me." That Friday, Daniel and I flew to Seattle. My parents picked us up from the airport. They looked older than I remembered, more tired. The car ride to their house was silent and tense. Once we were inside, we all sat down in the living room. My parents on one couch, Daniel and I on the other. "Okay," I said, "tell me everything." My dad pulled out a file folder. Inside were documents I had never seen before. Legal papers, official-looking forms, all with heavy redaction marks. "Sophie," my mom said, her voice shaking, "you're adopted. We adopted you when you were 3 months old." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "I'm what?" "You're adopted," Dad repeated. "We should have told you years ago. We wanted to tell you. But the circumstances of your adoption made it complicated." "What circumstances?" I asked. My parents looked at each other. Then Mom started talking. "Your biological mother was in a program called Witness Security," she said. "She had testified in a major criminal trial against very dangerous people. She was pregnant when she went into protection, and the program decided it was too risky for her to keep the baby. They arranged a special adoption. They found us, a couple who had been trying to have children for years, and they placed you with us. But there were conditions," Dad continued. "We had to sign agreements that we would never try to find your biological mother, that we would never tell you about the adoption unless absolutely necessary, that we would be vigilant about anyone showing unusual interest in you. Because," I prompted, "because the people your biological mother testified against were dangerous, and if they ever found out she had a child, they might try to hurt that child to get revenge on her." I sat there, trying to process this information. I was adopted. My biological mother had been a witness in a criminal trial. I had been given up at birth to protect me from criminals. It sounded like something out of a movie. "What was my biological mother's name?" I asked. "Elizabeth," Mom said. "Elizabeth Morrison. At least that's what we were told. We don't know if it was her real name or an alias." "Is she still alive?" I asked. "We don't know," Dad said. "We were told we would never be contacted again after the adoption was finalized, for your safety and hers."
We've had no contact with her or the program in 28 years. Daniel, who had been sitting quietly beside me, spoke up. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," he said, "do you know what trial your daughter's biological mother testified in? What case it was?"
"We were never given those details," Dad said. "Everything was confidential, but we were told it was organized crime, big, powerful, dangerous people, and that Elizabeth Morrison's testimony had helped put some of them in prison." I looked at the documents in the folder. Most of the information was blacked out. Names, dates, locations, all redacted. But there were a few details visible. The adoption had been arranged through something called the Witness Security Adoption Program. There was a case number, and there was one line that wasn't redacted. It said, "Adoptive parents must be prepared for the possibility that interested parties may attempt to locate the child at any point in her life." "So you knew," I said. "You knew that someone might come looking for me, and you never told me." "We hoped it would never happen," Mom said. "As the years went by and nothing happened, we thought maybe we were safe. Maybe the danger had passed. But now someone is looking for me," I said. "Someone has been trying to track me down through paintings they didn't even know existed, and I had no idea I needed to be careful because you never told me the truth." Daniel put his hand on my back. "Sophie," he said quietly, "your parents were trying to protect you." "I know," I said, "but I'm 28 years old. I deserved to know. You're right, Dad said. We should have told you years ago. We were just scared. Scared of what knowing might do to you. Scared of bringing this danger into focus by talking about it. We thought ignorance might keep you safer. But clearly, it didn't. We spent the rest of the weekend going through every document my parents had. We made copies of everything. We wrote down every detail they could remember about the adoption process. And we came up with a plan. We needed to find out who was looking for me and why. We needed to know what happened to Elizabeth Morrison, and we needed to figure out if I was still in danger. Back in New York, Daniel connected me with a private investigator who specialized in witness protection cases. Her name was Janet Torres, and she had worked with the U.S. Marshal Service before going private. I hired her to look into my past. Within a week, Janet came back with preliminary information. The trial your biological mother testified in was United States versus Richard Volkov and Associates, Janet said. It was a major organized crime case in 1996. Richard Volkov was a Russian mobster who ran a massive criminal network. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, murder for hire. Your biological mother, Elizabeth Morrison, was his accountant. She had access to all his financial records. When the FBI approached her, she agreed to testify in exchange for immunity and protection. What happened to Volkov? I asked. He was convicted on multiple charges, Janet said. He's currently serving life without parole in a federal supermax prison. So he's still alive? Daniel asked. Still alive, still in prison, Janet confirmed. But here's where it gets complicated. Volkov has 3 sons. All of them are involved in what's left of the family business, and all of them have spent years trying to find and hurt anyone who testified against their father. My chest tightened. They're looking for Elizabeth Morrison, and since they can't find her, they're looking for me. That's our working theory, Janet said. Based on the timeline, the increased interest in Marcus Webb's paintings started about 3 years ago. That corresponds with some changes in the Volkov organization. The youngest son, Dmitry, took over leadership around that time. He's known for being even more ruthless than his father. So Dmitry Volkov is trying to find me, I said, to hurt me as revenge for what my biological mother did. Possibly, Janet said, but there's another angle we need to consider. What if he's not trying to hurt you? What if he's trying to use you as leverage to find Elizabeth Morrison? What do you mean? I asked. Elizabeth Morrison is the one person who could still hurt the Volkov family, Janet explained. She testified once. She could testify again if new evidence came to light. She knows things about their operation that could help authorities. If Dmitry can find Elizabeth through you, he could eliminate that threat permanently. So I'm bait, I said. They want to use me to draw out my biological mother. That's one possibility, Janet said. The other possibility is simpler. They just want revenge. They want to hurt anyone connected to the woman who destroyed their father. Either way, you're in danger. Over the next few weeks, Janet continued her investigation. She found out more about the Volkov family, their current operations, their known associates. She also found out something else. Elizabeth Morrison was still alive. She's living under a new identity somewhere in the Midwest, Janet told me. The Marshals have kept her in protection all these years. But 3 years ago, there was a security breach. Some information about protected witnesses was leaked. It's possible the Volkovs got access to that information. Is she safe? I asked. For now, Janet said. The Marshals moved her after the breach. But if the Volkovs are looking for her through you, that could lead them right to her. I need to talk to her, I said. Is that possible? It's difficult, Janet said. The Marshals don't usually allow contact between witnesses and their biological children, especially children who were adopted out. But given the circumstances, I might be able to arrange something. It took another 2 weeks, but Janet finally got approval. I would be allowed to have one phone call with Elizabeth Morrison, supervised by the Marshals, for no more than 30 minutes. Daniel held my hand as I made the call.
A marshal answered first, confirming my identity and explaining the rules. Then I heard a woman's voice. "Hello?" she said. It was quiet, tentative, hopeful. "Hi," I said. "I'm Sophie. I'm your daughter." "Oh my God," Elizabeth said. I heard her start crying. "I never thought I would hear your voice. I never thought I would get to talk to you." "I don't even know what to say," I admitted. "I just found out about you a few weeks ago." "I know," Elizabeth said. "The marshals told me that the Volkovs had been looking for you. I'm so sorry, Sophie. I'm so sorry that my past is affecting you." "What happened?" I asked. "Why did you testify against Volkov?" "Because he was evil," Elizabeth said, simply. "I worked for him for 3 years before I understood the full extent of what he was doing, the people he hurt, the lives he destroyed. When the FBI approached me, I knew I had to help them stop him, even though I was pregnant, even though I knew I would have to give you up." "Why did you give me up?" I asked. "Couldn't you have kept me in protection with you?" "The marshals said it was too dangerous," Elizabeth said. "Volkov's sons were already making threats. They said anyone connected to me would be a target. They said the only way to keep you completely safe was to place you with a family who had no connection to me or the case. So I agreed. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I wanted you to have a normal life, a safe life." "I did," I said. "My parents, my adoptive parents, they're wonderful. They gave me everything." "I'm glad," Elizabeth said. "I've thought about you every single day for 28 years. I've wondered what you looked like, what kind of person you became. I wish I could have known you." We talked for the full 30 minutes. Elizabeth told me about her life before Volkov, about how she had been a normal accountant who made a terrible choice to work for a criminal. She told me about the trial, about how scary it had been to testify. She told me about the years in witness protection, moving from place to place, never able to form real connections because of her past. And then the marshal came on the line and said our time was up. "Wait," I said. "Before we hang up, I need to know. Are you safe? Are the Volkovs going to find you?" "I'm as safe as I can be," Elizabeth said. "But Sophie, you need to be careful. If they're looking for you, you can't lead them to me." "I won't," I promised. "I'll figure this out." "Sophie," Elizabeth said, "I love you. I've always loved you. Even though I gave you up, you were never gone from my heart." "I love you too," I said. And I realized I meant it. This woman I had never met, who had given me up before I could know her, she was my mother. And I loved her. After the call, I sat with Daniel and cried for an hour. He held me and didn't say anything. He just let me feel everything I needed to feel. When I finally stopped crying, I looked at him. "We need to end this," I said. "I can't live like this, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering if today is the day the Volkovs find me. And I can't put Elizabeth in danger. She gave up everything to keep me safe. I owe her the same." "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked. "I'm thinking we need to draw them out," I said. "We need to make the Volkovs come to us, on our terms, where we control the situation." "That's dangerous," Daniel said. "These are killers, Sophie. Professional criminals." "So we involve the police," I said. "We involve the FBI. We set a trap, and we end this, once and for all." Janet, the private investigator, thought it was a terrible idea. "You're talking about using yourself as bait," she said. "These people don't negotiate. They don't have conversations. They eliminate threats." "That's why we need law enforcement involved," I said. "We make it look like I'm vulnerable, like I'm an easy target. But really, I'm surrounded by agents. We catch them in the act." Janet sighed. "I'll reach out to my contacts at the FBI," she said, "but I can't promise they'll agree to this." To my surprise, the FBI was interested. The Volkov organization had been on their radar for years.
They had been trying to build a case against Dmitry Volkov but hadn't been able to gather enough evidence. If we could get him or his brothers to make a move against me, it could give them what they needed. The plan took weeks to set up. I would let it be known through art world channels that I was the subject of Marcus Webb's paintings.
That I was willing to meet with interested parties to discuss the paintings and my story. We would set up a meeting in a public place, somewhere the FBI could position agents without being obvious, and we would wait for the Volkovs to take the bait. It was Daniel who suggested using a museum for the meeting. Neutral ground, he said. Public enough to seem safe, but controlled enough that we can manage who comes and goes. The FBI agreed. We chose the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I would meet the interested parties in a back gallery, one that was usually quiet on weekday afternoons. FBI agents would be positioned as tourists and security guards throughout the museum. I would wear a wire, and at the first sign of danger, the agents would move in. The hardest part was the waiting. We spread the word and then had to sit tight for 2 weeks before we got a response. An art dealer contacted Daniel, saying he had clients who were very interested in meeting the subject of the Girl Who Reads series. They were willing to pay for the opportunity. They wanted to discuss acquiring the remaining paintings and perhaps commissioning new work. It was obviously a cover story. Marcus was dead. There would be no new work. But we agreed to the meeting. The day before it was scheduled, I barely slept. Daniel stayed with me, holding me, reminding me that I would be safe. "You don't have to do this," he kept saying. "We can call it off, find another way." "I have to," I told him. "I can't spend my life running from people I've never met because of something my biological mother did before I was born. I need to take control of this." The meeting was set for 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. Daniel wanted to come with me, but the FBI said no. Too many people would make the Volkovs suspicious. I had to go alone. I wore jeans and a sweater, trying to look casual and unsuspecting. The wire was hidden under my clothes, so small I couldn't even feel it. I arrived at the museum at 2:45 p.m. FBI agents had been there since opening, positioned throughout the building. I walked through the galleries slowly, pretending to look at art, waiting for 3 p.m. At exactly 3 p.m., I went to the designated meeting spot, a small gallery in the back of the museum that usually displayed medieval art. And that's when I saw them. 3 men in expensive suits, standing in front of a tapestry, talking quietly among themselves. When I entered, they turned to look at me. The oldest one, probably in his 40s with cold blue eyes, smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Sophie Chen," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. "That's me," I said. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "You're interested in Marcus Webb's paintings?" "We're interested in you," the man said. "You're Elizabeth Morrison's daughter?" The daughter she thought she could hide from us. I knew then that this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. These men hadn't come to talk about art. They had come for revenge. The trial took 6 months. The Volkov brothers were charged with conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, art theft, and a dozen other crimes. Daniel and I both testified. The paintings from the Girl Who Reads series were entered as evidence, shown to the jury as proof of how the Volkovs had tracked me down. It was surreal sitting in a courtroom, seeing my face on screens, hearing lawyers talk about Marcus Webb's artistic vision and how it had accidentally connected me to dangerous criminals. In the end, all 3 Volkov brothers were convicted. They would spend the rest of their lives in prison, just like their father. After the trial, I went back to Seattle to visit my parents. We had a lot of conversations about my adoption, about Elizabeth Morrison, about the choices they had made. "I don't blame you for not telling me," I told them. "You were trying to protect me. But from now on, no more secrets." They agreed. We also talked about Elizabeth Morrison, my biological mother. I learned that she had wanted me to have a good life, that giving me up had been the hardest decision she ever made. My parents had one letter from her, written when I was born. In it, she said she hoped I would grow up safe and happy and never have to know about the darkness she had lived through. I wish I could have known her, I told my parents.
I wish I could have thanked her for being brave enough to testify and to give me up so I could be safe. You can honor her, my mom said, by living the life she wanted for you, by being safe and happy. Back in New York, Daniel and I had to figure out what we were to each other. We had been through something intense and traumatic together. We had become close in a way that felt real and possibly built on adrenaline and danger. We need to take this slow, I told him. We need to figure out if what we feel is real or just circumstantial. I agree, Daniel said. But, Sophie, I meant what I said. I've fallen for you, and I think I would have, even without all the drama. So we dated. Slowly, carefully, like normal people. We went to movies and restaurants. We took walks in the park. We had conversations that weren't about criminal investigations or stolen paintings. And I fell for him too. Really fell for him. Not because he had protected me or because we had this wild story, but because he was kind and funny and patient and real. The trial itself was an ordeal that lasted several months. I had to testify multiple times, reliving the museum confrontation, explaining how the Volkov brothers had tracked me through the paintings. The defense attorneys tried to discredit me, suggesting I was seeking attention or had somehow provoked the situation. But the evidence was overwhelming. Video footage from the museum, recordings from the wire I had worn, testimony from FBI agents who had witnessed everything, financial records showing the Volkovs had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to acquire the paintings, and, most damningly, the gun that the oldest brother had been reaching for when the agents moved in. During one particularly difficult day of testimony, the defense attorney asked me why I thought I was so important that a major criminal organization would spend years looking for me. "You're not famous," he said. "You're not wealthy. You're just an ordinary person. Why would my clients care about you at all?" "Because I'm Elizabeth Morrison's daughter," I said, "and your clients wanted revenge on anyone connected to her." "That's not what this is about," the attorney said. "My clients are art collectors. They were interested in acquiring a complete series of valuable paintings." "If that's true," I said, "why did your client reach for a gun when he saw me?" The attorney had no good answer for that. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Maria Santos, built a compelling case. She showed how the Volkovs had systematically tried to track me down, how they had approached Marcus Webb months before his death, pretending to research witness protection, how Marcus had unknowingly mentioned his paintings of a subject with an interesting background, how the Volkovs had then spent years trying to acquire every painting, believing that eventually the trail would lead them to me. And it did, Maria said in her closing argument. It led them to Sophie Chen, a 28-year-old archivist living in Brooklyn, a woman whose only crime was being born to a mother who did the right thing and testified against criminals. The Volkov brothers didn't come to that museum to talk about art. They came with a weapon. They came with threats. They came to hurt an innocent woman as revenge for sins she never committed. The jury deliberated for 3 days. They came back with guilty verdicts on all major charges: conspiracy, attempted murder, art theft, witness intimidation. The Volkov brothers would spend the next 40 years in prison, ensuring they would die behind bars just like their father. When the verdict was read, I cried. Not from happiness exactly, but from relief. It was finally over. After the trial, there was a strange period of adjustment. For months, my life had been consumed by danger and investigation and court proceedings. Now suddenly it was over, and I had to figure out who I was when I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I went back to work at the museum. My coworkers knew something had happened. The trial had been in the news after all, but they were respectful enough not to pry. I threw myself into my job, organizing archives, helping with exhibitions, losing myself in the quiet, detailed work I loved. But I was different now. I had learned things about myself during those months of danger. I had learned I was braver than I thought. I had learned I could make difficult decisions under pressure. I had learned that I came from a woman who had been willing to sacrifice everything for what was right. I also started therapy. Dr. Rebecca Lynn helped me process the trauma of everything that had happened. The shock of learning I was adopted, the fear of being hunted by dangerous men, the grief of never knowing Elizabeth Morrison, and the complicated feelings I had about Marcus Webb, the artist who had inadvertently changed my life by painting me. "What do you want your life to look like now?" Dr. Lin asked during one session. "Now that you're safe, now that you know the truth about your past." I thought about it. "I want to live fully," I said. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to honor Elizabeth Morrison by being brave and making good choices. And I want to build a future with Daniel, if he still wants that." "Does he still want that?" Dr. Lin asked. "I think so," I said, "but I'm scared. We got together under such intense circumstances. What if when things are normal, we realize we don't actually work?" "Then you'll have your answer," Dr. Lin said. "But Sophie, you can't protect yourself from potential heartbreak by holding back. Real love requires risk." She was right. So I decided to stop holding back. Daniel and I had been dating for about 4 months when I told him I loved him. We were in his penthouse cooking dinner together. He was chopping vegetables while I stirred sauce on the stove. And I just looked at him and realized I couldn't go another day without saying it. "I love you," I said. Daniel looked up from his cutting board. "What?" "I love you," I repeated. "Not because you protected me or because we went through something crazy together. I love you because you make me laugh, because you explain art to me in ways that make me see it differently, because you're kind to servers at restaurants, and you always remember to ask about my day. Because when I'm with you, I feel like the best version of myself." Daniel put down the knife and walked over to me. He turned off the stove and took both my hands. "I love you too," he said. "I've loved you since that first night when you were shivering in the hallway and I saw that portrait and realized my art dealer instincts had been right. Marcus had captured something special, but it took getting to know you to realize that what he captured was just the surface. The real you is so much more amazing than any painting could show." We kissed, and it felt like sealing a promise. About 2 months later, Daniel took me to meet his parents. They lived in Connecticut, and they had been eager to meet the woman their son kept talking about. His mother, Grace, was warm and welcoming. She hugged me as soon as I walked in the door. "Daniel has told us so much about you," she said. "And we saw you on the news during that trial. You were so brave." His father, Richard, was more reserved, but kind. He asked thoughtful questions about my work at the museum and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. Over dinner, Grace asked how we had met. Daniel and I looked at each other and laughed. "Do you want to tell them, or should I?" Daniel asked. "You tell it," I said. "Your version is better." So Daniel told them the whole story, about me getting locked out, about the portrait, about Marcus Webb and Elizabeth Morrison and the Volkov brothers. His parents listened with expressions that ranged from shock to concern to amazement. "That's quite possibly the most unique how we met story I've ever heard," Richard said when Daniel finished. "It sounds like a movie," Grace added. "It felt like a movie while it was happening," I said. "I still can't quite believe it all really happened, but I'm glad it did, because otherwise I never would have gotten to know your son." After dinner, while Daniel and his father were cleaning up, Grace pulled me aside. "I want you to know that I've never seen Daniel this happy," she said. "He's had relationships before, but none of them felt right. With you, it's different. He lights up when he talks about you." "I feel the same way about him," I told her. "Your son is one of the best men I've ever met." Grace squeezed my hand. "Welcome to the family, Sophie." 6 months after the trial, Daniel asked me to move in with him. We were having coffee in the penthouse, a lazy Sunday morning. "I spend almost every night here anyway," Daniel said. "It seems silly for you to keep paying rent on a place you barely use, and honestly, I like having you here. The penthouse feels like a home now, instead of just a place where I sleep." I had been thinking the same thing, but I had one concern. "What about the portrait?" I asked. "The one of me. Won't it be weird for me to live here with a painting of myself on the wall?" Daniel smiled. "I was going to ask you about that. Do you want me to take it down? Put it in storage? I thought about it. That portrait had started everything. It was the reason I had discovered my past, the reason I had met Daniel, the reason everything had changed. But it was also a beautiful piece of art. Marcus Webb had been incredibly talented, and he had captured something real about me. The woman in that painting was absorbed in her book, unaware that her whole life was about to change. She looked peaceful and happy. I wanted to remember that version of myself, even as I became someone new. No, I said. I want to keep it up. It's part of our story, part of how we found each other. Are you sure? Daniel asked. It doesn't feel narcissistic to you? It feels like honoring Marcus, I said, and honoring the journey that brought us together. Plus, you were right that first night. I do look good in that painting. Daniel laughed and pulled me into a hug. Okay then, the portrait stays. So, I moved into the penthouse. We combined our belongings, his modern furniture and my vintage finds, his minimalist aesthetic and my love of plants and color. The space became ours, a blend of both our personalities. And the portrait hung on the main wall, a constant reminder of everything that had happened. We also started tracking down the other paintings in the Girl Who Reads series. With the trial over and the Volkovs in prison, some of the collectors who owned the paintings were willing to sell. Richard Hayes, the man whose daughter had died, offered to sell his painting to me. I think it should be with you, he said when Daniel and I visited him. These paintings are part of your story. You should have them. We negotiated a fair price, and soon I had 2 of the 7 paintings. We found a third one at an estate sale. The collector who had owned it had passed away, and their family didn't know the significance of the piece. We acquired it for a fraction of what it was worth. 3 of the paintings were in museums or permanent collections and weren't available for purchase.
But we visited them regularly, making trips to Chicago and Philadelphia to see them. And the stolen painting from Boston, the one that had started this whole investigation, was recovered by the FBI after the trial. It had been stored in a warehouse owned by one of the Volkov brothers' associates. The FBI returned it to the gallery, and I went to see it on display, properly protected this time behind better security. Standing in front of it, I felt a strange mix of emotions. This painting had been stolen because of me. It had been used as a tool to try and find and hurt me. But it was also just a painting, just Marcus Webb doing what he did best, capturing a moment in time. We hung the 3 paintings we owned in different rooms of the penthouse. The original, the masterpiece, stayed in the living room. One went in the bedroom, showing me from behind, curled up with my book, and one went in Daniel's home office, the laughing one, the most joyful of the series. Living with these paintings, these portraits of myself, should have been strange, but instead it felt right. They were reminders of different versions of myself, the version who didn't know about her past, the version who was hunting for truth, the version who had survived and come out stronger. I also made peace with my adoptive parents. We had long conversations about the adoption, about their choice to keep it secret, about the weight they had carried for 28 years. I understand why you didn't tell me, I said during one of our phone calls. You were trying to protect me, but I wish you had trusted me with the truth sooner. We wish that too, my mom said. We made the best decisions we could with the information we had, but knowing what we know now, we would have done things differently. That's all we can ask for, I said, for people to do their best and learn from their mistakes. My brother, who I had told about everything after the trial, was fascinated by the whole story. He kept asking questions about the paintings, about the Volkovs, about Elizabeth Morrison. Do you ever think about trying to find her family? He asked. Like, you might have biological aunts and uncles and cousins out there. I've thought about it, I admitted, but I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I've already had so much change in my life. Maybe someday, but not now. I also started a project. I began writing down everything I knew about Elizabeth Morrison. Every detail, from the adoption documents, from my conversation with her, from the records Janet had helped me access. I wrote about her childhood, her career, her decision to testify. I wrote about her time in witness protection, the loneliness and fear she must have lived with, and I wrote about her choice to give me up, the ultimate sacrifice she made to keep me safe. When I finished, it was a 50-page document, a history of a woman I never knew, but who had shaped my entire life. I gave copies to my adoptive parents and to the Marshals Service, in case there were others out there who wanted to know about Elizabeth Morrison's legacy. I'm also considering writing a book about the whole experience, the paintings, the investigation, the trial. My editor at the museum said it would make an incredible story, but I'm not sure I'm ready to share it with the world yet. Right now, it's still too personal, too raw. Maybe someday, when I have more distance from it, I'll write that book. But for now, I'm content to just live my life. A year after I moved in, Daniel proposed. It was a Sunday morning, and we were in the penthouse. I was reading, curled up on the couch in almost the exact position Marcus had painted me in 6 years ago. He came and sat next to me. "Sophie," he said, "can I interrupt your book for a minute?" "Of course," I said, putting it down. "What's up?" He took my hand. "I've been thinking about that first portrait, the one Marcus painted of you. He saw something special in you 6 years ago, something that made him stop and observe and capture. But what I love is that he only saw the surface. He saw a woman reading, and he saw that she was interesting and worth painting, but he didn't know you, not really. I know you," Daniel continued. "I know that you're brave even when you're terrified. I know that you're loyal to the people you love. I know that you have a terrible habit of eating cereal for dinner when you're too tired to cook. I know that you cry at sad movies but pretend you're not crying. I know that you hum when you're concentrating. And I know that I want to spend the rest of my life knowing you even better." He pulled out a ring box. "Sophie Chen, will you marry me?" I was crying before he even finished asking. "Yes," I said. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and I noticed something. It had an unusual setting, and when I looked closer, I saw it was designed to look like a picture frame, a tiny portrait in metal. "It's perfect," I whispered. We got married 8 months later in a small ceremony at a gallery in Manhattan. Not Daniel's gallery, but a beautiful space filled with art. We hung the Girl Who Reads portraits throughout the venue, creating an exhibition of my past selves watching over our wedding. My adoptive parents walked me down the aisle. They had been through so much with me, carrying secrets for years, supporting me through the investigation and trial. Having them there felt right. Daniel's parents were in the front row, beaming. Rachel, my best friend, was my maid of honor, and Daniel's best friend, Marcus, coincidentally also named Marcus, though no relation to Webb, was his best man. During the ceremony, the officiant asked if anyone wanted to say anything about the couple. My brother stood up. He hadn't told me he was going to do this, but I should have expected it. When Sophie called me a couple years ago and told me she had discovered she was adopted, that she was being hunted by Russian mobsters, and that she had fallen in love with a neighbor who had a painting of her in his apartment, I thought she had lost her mind, he said. Everyone laughed. But then I met Daniel, my brother continued, and I saw how he looks at her, like she's the most amazing thing he's ever seen. Which, coincidentally, is how she looks at him. These two have been through more in 2 years than most couples go through in a lifetime, and they're still choosing each other. That's real love. We had our reception in the same gallery. Dancing, food, champagne. My parents got a little drunk and told embarrassing stories about my childhood. Daniel's mom pulled me aside and welcomed me officially into the family. And at the end of the night, Daniel and I stood in front of the original portrait, the masterpiece, and had our last dance. "This painting brought you to me," Daniel said as we swayed to the music. "Best investment I ever made." "You didn't buy it," I pointed out. "Marcus gave it to you." "Okay, best gift I ever received then," Daniel said, "but you know what I mean." "I do," I said, "and I'm grateful. For Marcus's art, for that night I got locked out, for everything that led us here."
We honeymooned in Paris. We visited the Louvre and the Musée d'Orsay and dozens of smaller galleries. We ate amazing food and drank wine and walked along the Seine. And we talked about our future. We want kids someday, we both agreed, maybe 2 or 3. We want to travel more. We want to eventually buy a house, though we're keeping the penthouse for now. Daniel wants to expand his gallery. I'm considering going back to school for a doctorate. We have plans and dreams and a whole life ahead of us. But more than that, we have each other. We have a relationship built on truth, even though that truth was discovered in the strangest possible way. When we came back from Paris, something unexpected happened. Janet, the private investigator who had helped me so much, called with news. "Sophie," she said, "I've been doing some more research into Elizabeth Morrison's family, and I found something." "What?" I asked. "You have a half-sister," Janet said. "Elizabeth had another daughter, born about 5 years after you. This daughter was adopted out as well, through the same program. Her name is Emma, and she lives in Portland." I sat down hard. "I have a sister?" "You have a sister," Janet confirmed. "She doesn't know about you yet. The marshals have been keeping both your identities protected, but now that the Volkov threat is over, they're willing to facilitate contact if you want." "Do I want?" I asked Daniel after I hung up. "Do I want to meet her?" "I think you have to," Daniel said. "Even if it's scary. Even if it's complicated. She's your sister." So I called the number Janet gave me. A woman answered. "Hello? Emma?" I asked. "Yes, this is Emma. Who is this?" "My name is Sophie," I said. "I just found out we're half-sisters." There was a long pause. Then Emma started crying. "I thought I was alone," she said. "I thought I was the only one." "You're not alone," I told her. "You have me now." We arranged to meet in person a month later. Emma flew to New York, and I picked her up from the airport. She looked like me. Same dark hair, same eyes, same smile. We stared at each other for a long moment, then hugged. We spent a week together, swapping stories. Emma had a similar experience to mine. She had been adopted by loving parents who had kept the secret.
She had grown up not knowing about Elizabeth Morrison or the Witness Security Adoption Program, but unlike me, she had never been targeted by the Volkovs. Her identity had remained hidden. We talked about Elizabeth Morrison, about the woman who had given us both up. We looked at the photos and letters I had collected. We cried together for the mother we never knew. And we made a promise to stay in each other's lives, to build the family relationship that had been stolen from us by circumstance. Emma came to visit again 2 months later, this time bringing her fiancé, a man named David, who was kind and funny. The 4 of us spent the weekend together, and it felt natural, easy, like we had known each other for years instead of months. Before they left, Emma pulled me aside. "I'm glad I found you," she said. "Or that you found me, whatever. I'm just glad we're in each other's lives now." "Me too," I said, and I meant it. Having Emma, having this connection to Elizabeth Morrison through another person who shared my history, it felt like completing a circle. My life now is full. I have Daniel, who I love more every day. I have my adoptive parents, who I've forgiven and who are still so important to me. I have my brother and his family. I have Emma, my half-sister, this unexpected gift. I have meaningful work that I enjoy. I have a beautiful home filled with art, including 3 paintings of myself that remind me of how far I've come. And every day, I walk past that original portrait, the girl who reads, the painting that changed everything. Marcus Webb painted me 6 years ago, capturing a moment when I was unaware that my whole life was about to shift. He saw something in me worth preserving, and inadvertently, his art saved my life. Because without those paintings, the Volkovs might have found me in a very different way. They might have caught me off guard. I might not have survived. But instead,
The paintings were the thread that connected all the pieces. They led me to Daniel. They led me to discovering my past. They led me to ending the Volkov threat before it could destroy me. Art changed my life. But more than that, art revealed my life. It showed me truths I didn't know existed. It connected me to my past and my present. It brought me love and family and understanding. People ask me sometimes if I resent Marcus for painting me without permission, if I feel violated by the fact that he observed me for weeks without my knowledge. But I don't. I feel grateful. He gave me a gift even if he didn't know it at the time. He gave me a way to understand where I came from and where I was going. And for that, I'll always be thankful. And every day, I walk past that portrait of me, the girl who reads, and I'm reminded of everything that happened. The strangeness, the danger, the mystery. But I'm also reminded that sometimes getting locked out of your apartment can lead you exactly where you're supposed to be. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.